welcome to Broke Teachers Travel Podcast. I'm Marnie.
And I'm Jeff.
And this week we are talking about more of Jeff's trip to Turkey. Where was it that you found your favorite things?
Oh my gosh. So last time we talked about Istanbul, and we may go back to Istanbul at some point in this little series, but we moved a little bit down the coast, and we went to a place called Canakkale. And this place was absolutely amazing. It's right on the Straits of the Dardanelles. And, so again, you could look across and you could see one side's considered Asia, one side's considered Europe. And there's a little resort town with a nice long boardwalk. And it's just a really cool tourist area. We, myself and my friend Nick, we walked up and down that for maybe 5 or 6 miles. I had just a great time there.
And it wasn't just the history part of it. It also brought happiness to our literary hearts as well, I think. Yeah. I mean, because this was just the coolest thing in the world to me as someone who majored in English, and I have a little bit of a literature background. It is so cool that you got to see some of the stuff you got to see.
Well, and the most important thing is that we are going to go see it together.
Yes,
so that's what I'm really looking forward to.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
So one of the cool things is, there's just so many cool things here, but we'll start and you'll see just the giddiness or hear the giddiness in my voice if we're going to insert some clips.
We're going to insert some video clips and pictures, yes.
But I went to the remains of the city of Troy, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. It was the pictures you brought back when you were FaceTiming me. It's just absolutely amazing.
I mean, it is just a beautiful place. It's probably about a 20-minute, maybe 25-minute drive there, and it's kind of just out in the middle of nowhere. And you got to understand over time the coastline changes a little bit. So for years they thought that Troy was just a myth, and then finally in the late 1800s, a German archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann actually discovered some walls and some more walls, and so they do know now that Troy was actually a real city. It was built on top of another city, which is built on another city, but it did exist, and it was something that we go from being something of just myth to actually real historical fact that the city itself, while everything else may be a myth, it was based on some
actuality, yeah.
Right.
And you actually got to see the ruins of Troy that were still there, and that's what was so impressive to me.
And one of the crazy things is, I guess, with traveling, especially when you go to so many of these places, when we think about in comparison to the U.S. how young we are, the remains of this place is over 3,000 years old.
And it looks like it has withstood the test of time pretty well. I mean, whoever the architects were that designed this did a really good job, because a lot of it is still intact.
And that's one of the things that we talk about all the time when we go to these ancient roads, and some of them are still in use. Now the ones in Troy aren't, but they've been around for 3,000 years, and there's no potholes.
Yeah. Okay. What's happening today? I have questions.
Right.
I am probably at one of the coolest places I've ever been. I am in the ruins of Troy here in Turkey, and it's just an amazing thing. Just the history behind this, the fact that it was thought to be a myth up until the late 1800s. Heinrich Schliemann, his excavation, all of that stuff. Going back to Homer's Iliad and the story of Achilles. And here is one of the outer walls. I'm going to go down and take some more pictures.
Now, another thing that you got to see was one of the lookout points.
Right.
And that was really neat.
Well, there's this one wonderful part that as you go up, it's on a hill. And what was so interesting is at one point, it was all covered up with dirt, and people didn't realize that there was all of this under there. So when you see the video, you could see that, maybe 20 or 30 feet down, at one point that just kind of looked like a mountain there that had been covered up.
It was really, really interesting. And was it a lookout point for the actual Trojan War? Is that what it was used for?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. There's different heights of the wall, but this wall, gave the great vantage point.
All right, guys, this is one of the lookout points. It would have been a lookout tower various times throughout, not just the area of Troy from the Trojan War, but this place there's things built on top of it, and so there was about 9 different layers going down. So kind of where I'm standing at one point was kind of as high up as it is. It was totally covered in dirt, and they excavated down to all of this stuff. You can see down there's farmland, and again, that's kind of the story of where the Trojans would have fought. If you look over in the distance, back over there, that is the coastline, okay? So that's where the Greeks, or the Achaeans, would have landed their ships. So if we're looking here, out there, this is definitely one of those areas where the Greek army would have been camped out down here, and the Trojans were here.
And one of the cool things to me is, loving my literature like you love it. In addition to the Iliad and the Odyssey, where they recount this, there is this Alfred Lord Tennyson poem, my absolute favorite. I read it, pretty often, and every time I read it, I get something new. And I guess it's because as we go through our stages of life, it kind of, sets with me.
Different meaning. Yeah.
It absolutely does. And there's a part where it says, "Far on the ringing plains of windy Troy," and when I get there, as a comparison to Istanbul, where it's pretty hot and muggy, very much like North Florida in the summer, when you get up on this hill, it is a constant breeze, and
you could actually hear it and see it in the video,
right,
too. I mean, you can watch, the trees moving and hear the wind blowing. It is so amazing.
And when I sit up there, just just in amazement, and again, I know it's mythology, but the story itself, I could, almost close my eyes and hear the epic battle between Hector and Achilles on the, ringing plains of windy Troy. And
which is just so cool to me.
It's cool to me too.
I am standing atop of what would have been the wall of Troy, looking off in the distance. And if any of you guys have ever read the Alfred Lord Tennyson poem, Ulysses, there's one of my favorite lines. It says, "Far on the ringing plains of windy Troy." You can look around and see how windy this place is. Just think, at some point they had the whole Greek army out this way. Maybe this is the area where Achilles and Hector fought their epic battle. Just really an amazing place for me to be. I am beyond excited to be here.
And you found something else there. Actually, you found a couple of these throughout your trip, but you found an excavation site.
Right. Well, all of this was excavated. And again, it's been I guess when money comes around for excavation, that's kind of how Heinrich Schliemann got the money to actually pay for the excavation of Troy. He excavated something in Greece where he pretty much lied about something, but everybody thought it was pretty cool, so they gave him a lot of money, and he did take that money to do the excavation of Troy. But there is still ongoing excavation sites there, and that is one of the cool things that when you go into these places, it's like they've been excavating this off and on for the last 120 years, and yet they're still excavating it. When I'm in Pompeii, they're still excavating. A couple other places in Turkey.
And it kind of makes you just want to get in there and help them out and see what you find,
And what's really interesting is I've noticed, and I make a point of this a couple of times, if you see like a dome shape, almost like a tent, it's because even though it's 3,000 years old, there's something underneath that tent that for some reason that there may be weather damage or something to it, so they actually preserve it a little bit.
Protect it from the weather. Gotcha.
Which is something I didn't know.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, though, that they take the initiative to do that and protect it from declining any further.
Right.
That's very cool. You also saw the oldest part of Troy as well.
Right, the very center part. And again, like I said, that one of the interesting things is anytime you study antiquity history before the Middle Ages, basically there's a city built upon a city that's built upon a city. If you go to Rome or to London, you see some of these areas that may be 10 or 15 feet below what the level is today. And that's, the oldest part of Troy. It was deep down inside of what would have been the walls back then. And there are other parts that were built up around it much later.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this area I'm pointing to right here was
the initial area that Heinrich Schliemann is going to excavate back in the late 1800s. Unfortunately, most of the frieze or the reliefs or any of those things that were taken, even the columns, now are in some museums in other countries, but this is where it all began, right here.
One of the things you ran across at the excavation site was a pretty important place.
Right, and it was where Heinrich Schliemann actually found what they called the treasure of Priam. So King Priam was the king of Troy in the Trojan War, and this was a place where there was some valuable stuff found there, and so they said it was the treasure area of King Priam, which is kind of interesting because in the story, the city of Troy is totally sacked and everything of value is taken. So
it's amazing how things get just kind of shifted around, throughout history and literature and different things. It changes.
Guys, this area right here is where Schliemann originally excavated it. He found what was called Priam's treasure here, and so the treasure of King Priam, who was the king of Troy during the Trojan War. So this area, maybe this is house or something to that effect. But again, a lot of this historically, trying to put the myth together with the actual history. But remember, guys, the important thing is for, years they believed that this place didn't exist at all, and then we know that it did. So that's pretty cool.
There was also some areas that are, you said, fortified, like really.
Right. Well, still, even though the city's built thousands of years ago, it's it seems like a much later, like maybe a fortress from like the Middle Ages. Those rocks are still there. The stones are laid perfectly upon them, and it's just a really interesting thing that the entire city, there's like kind of a wall, and then there's like an interior wall, and then a wall inside of that. So there's multi levels of that as you're going through, and it's really hard to figure out if it was originally that way or were these walls built on.
Yeah.
And the building material looks the same to me, but like I said, one day I'm going to go with someone that knows a lot more about it than I am. And
all right, guys, you can see here that this is one of the fortified areas. You can see the walls, all of those things there. Again, this was a big trench originally dug by Schliemann. It wasn't nearly this big, but there was some American archaeologist team that came in the 1930s and began digging, and this was still being excavated up until the 1980s.
And you said there was a ramp.
Oh, yes.
Too.
Yeah, so there was actually a ramp going into what would have been one of the gates of Troy, and so it's maybe on a 45-degree incline going up there, and if you look at there's actually a road in there, and there was part of a wall where you could tell there used to be some sort of gate there that people would come through there, but the ramp was actually part of the road to go up there.
Okay, so it was built up for
All right, take a look at this ramp right here, guys, going up. There would have been a temple or something right here. There would have been a big gate, this ramp going up on this area. One of the things that's really interesting about these walls is during antiquity, they would have been maybe something like 4 meters thick, okay? So, that's pretty amazing, the thickness of the walls.
And then, there's other areas that, there's other channels and stuff that you kind of see running off, and that was to let water drainage and sewage and other stuff, but hopefully not down the ramp that everybody was coming in.
Yeah.
Or it probably wouldn't have been nearly as popular.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you said the land around it, and from the pictures, it looks absolutely gorgeous.
Right.
Just stunning farmland that is just beautiful. You said it's super fertile land.
All right, guys, we've talked about the Turkish Straits quite a bit, and we know how important the Dardanelles were to anyone. It's one of those great choke points we talk about in history. But I want you to look out from the walls of Troy and look at all of this farmland out here. And, in addition to controlling trade routes, I mean, this land has been fertile for 4,000 years, and it's one of the reasons that we don't talk, nearly enough about this entire area of the world, how fertile the Aegean coast is. The Sea of Marmara, this area, it looks like they just grow about everything here.
And that's one of the things that, one of the big misconceptions I had about Turkey was that
Me too. Before you went,
and
it's not how I pictured it.
Right, and my friend Nick, he was like, "What are you talking about? There's no desert, there's no camels," and there was a one photo op for tourists, and I saw a camel, and he was like, "Just shut up." But yeah, it's fertile everywhere, and it makes sense because it's on a peninsula. Okay, so it's surrounded on three sides by the water, and there is all sorts of, when you think of Mediterranean, olives and any type of produce that you have over there, everything's locally grown.
Yeah, you said you picked grapes right off
the
vine.
Oh yeah, right off the vine. That and figs and whatever, just kind of walking around, and it's kind of odd because they're right there, and they're like, "Yeah, go ahead," and I'm like, "Are you sure?" But yeah, but when you think about the value of the city of Troy, and you think about just that strategic area, which we'll talk about later in the 20th century as well, but the land being so fertile, it produces so much. And back then, think about everything that needed to feed people of that city, and the immense trade that it brought from the value of the fertility of that land.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And there's some wind turbines as well.
In the far distance, there are probably 200 wind turbines over there, so that's pretty interesting.
And one of the things, again, I can't overstate how advanced Turkey was in comparison to what I had thought. I mean, the
American perception
right,
of it.
Absolutely, and that there were wind turbines in a lot of places throughout Turkey. So there were a huge number of wind turbines, but there's this one area where you kind of go off and you're looking at you're standing in a 3,000-year-old city looking at the 21st century technology.
Yeah.
There's actually wind turbines, and there's some there's a solar field way off in the distance you can see as well.
Yeah, Turkey is very technologically advanced.
It really is, and they lead the world in advancement of drones and things like that. So I learned that one.
Really cool. Yeah, very cool. And one of the big things you saw kind of brought it all together, I think.
Right,
both literary, historically, and even entertainment.
Okay, so there's so many things when I never want to go to a historical movie with any of my friends because they're like, "Hey, is that what happened? Hey, is that what happened?" And I'm like, I'm trying to enjoy the movie, knowing good and well that is not what happened.
But it's for entertainment.
But it is for entertainment. And here's the thing: even if the story is distorted somewhat, if it encourages just one or two people to delve into the real literature of it, then I think it's worth it. But the Brad Pitt movie Troy that came out in the early 2000s, it was pretty good. It had a lot of Hollywood A-listers in there, and it was really cool. There was a great fight scene between Hector and Achilles in there, but the actual prop of the Trojan horse is actually there in Turkey, down in the courtyard of the city, and so it was the movie prop. And so I think there's a couple of pictures, or maybe it's in the video.
Yeah.
But it was really neat, really neat.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's your favorite teacher, Jeff. I'm here at Canakkale, Turkey. Earlier today, I was at the Troy National Excavation Site, archaeological site. That was really cool. Behind me, we actually have the prop that was used in the 2004 Brad Pitt movie Troy. So this is the actual movie prop that was used. It is pretty massive.
Kind of cool to bring it all together like that, and see it, and it just kind of sparks all those images in your mind, and you can visualize everything while you're standing there.
It really is, and so we have the movie itself, and then yet we have the story, and then kind of just putting it all together. But just seeing those scenes, it's one of those things that you'll see in one of the videos where I'm just like amazed, and so I do get giddy even talking about it because it's been one of my absolute favorite things I've ever seen,
and something you've wanted to see for a very long time.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Be sure to drop us a comment, follow us on social media. Remember, we have a website too, broketeacherstravel.com. Check it out. And remember, break the monotony,
not the bank.
Bye, guys. Have a great weekend.